When a woman sends a breakup text to the wrong number, she accidentally contacts the most dangerous man in New York. A crime lord who becomes obsessed with saving her from a world she doesn't even know exists. But protection turns into possession, and soon she's trapped between the man who betrayed her heart and the one who would burn down the city to keep it. This is a story about love, violence, and the thin line between salvation and destruction. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments so I can see how far this story travels. Hit that like button and let's begin. The rain came down like punishment. Sienna Vale sat on the edge of her bed in a Brooklyn apartment that smelled like mildew and takeout she'd forgotten to throw away 3 days ago, staring at her phone screen through eyes that wouldn't stop burning. Her hands shook. Not from cold. From rage so pure it felt like swallowing glass. 3 years. 3 years of her life poured into a man who couldn't even bother to hide his betrayal properly. The photo was still there on her screen. Her boyfriend Marcus, wrapped around some blonde in a dress that cost more than Sienna's rent, his hand on the small of her back in that possessive way he used to touch Sienna before he started working late every night. The Instagram post wasn't even private. He hadn't cared enough to hide it. She drained the last of the wine straight from the bottle. Cheap stuff that tasted like regret and burned going down. The room tilted slightly. Good. She wanted the edges blurred when she did this. Her fingers moved across the screen, typing words that felt like knives leaving her chest. You're a coward, a liar, and I hope she destroys you the way you destroyed me. Lose my number. She hit send before she could second-guess herself. The message whooshed away into the digital void, carrying 3 years of love and anger and humiliation with it. Sienna dropped the phone on her bed and pressed her palms against her eyes until she saw stars. She wanted to scream. She wanted to throw something. She wanted to stop feeling like she'd been gutted and left bleeding on the floor of her own life. Her phone buzzed. She grabbed it, expecting Marcus to grovel or deflect or gaslight her one more time. The number on her screen wasn't his. Unknown caller. Sienna's stomach dropped. She stared at the incoming call like it might bite her. Had she sent that message to the wrong number? No, she'd been careful. She'd selected Marcus's contact. She was sure of it. Wasn't she? The wine hummed in her blood. The room felt too small suddenly, walls pressing in. The phone kept buzzing in her hand, insistent and wrong. Against every instinct screaming at her to ignore it, Sienna answered. Hello? Silence. Not empty silence. The kind filled with presence. Someone breathing on the other end. Someone waiting. Then a voice came through, low, controlled, carrying an accent she couldn't quite place. British, maybe, but smoothed out by years of something else. You sent me a message. Sienna's heart kicked against her ribs. I think there was a mistake. I meant to. You told me I'm a coward and a liar. The voice didn't sound angry. It sounded curious, almost amused. You told me you hope someone destroys me. Her face burned. That wasn't meant for you. I'm sorry. I was texting someone else. Your boyfriend. It wasn't a question. Ex-boyfriend, Sienna corrected, the word tasting bitter. Look, I'm really sorry. I don't know how my phone must have. What did he do? The question landed like a hand on her shoulder. Unexpected, too intimate for a stranger. What? Your ex-boyfriend. What did he do to earn a message like that? Sienna should have hung up, should have blocked the number and pretended this never happened. Instead, she found herself answering. He cheated on me. Her voice cracked. 3 years together, and he cheated on me with some. She stopped herself. This man didn't need to hear her fall apart. It doesn't matter. I'm sorry for bothering you. Don't apologize. I just told a complete stranger I hope they get destroyed. I've had worse said about me. There was something dark in his tone, something that made her skin prickle. And you're not bothering me. Sienna didn't know what to say to that. The rain hammered harder against her window. Somewhere outside, a car alarm wailed and died. What's your name? The stranger asked. She should have lied, should have given him nothing, but the wine and the heartbreak and the strange intimacy of this moment stripped away her defenses. Sienna. Sienna. He repeated it like he was tasting the syllables. I'm Lucien. Hi, Lucien. She laughed, a broken sound. Sorry you got dragged into my breakup. I'm not. Something in his voice made her breath catch. Not threatening, worse, interested. You should get some sleep, Sienna, Lucien said, and stay away from men who don't know what they have. Before she could respond, the line went dead. Sienna stared at her phone, heart racing for reasons she couldn't name. The apartment felt different now, smaller and larger at the same time. She checked her sent messages and her stomach sank. The last digit of Marcus's number. She'd transposed it. One wrong number, and her rage-fueled breakup text had landed in the hands of a complete stranger. A stranger who'd called her. A stranger whose voice she couldn't stop replaying in her head. She should have felt embarrassed. Instead, she felt something else entirely, something that made her skin feel too tight. Sienna told herself she'd never hear from Lucien again, that it was a weird coincidence and nothing more. She was wrong. The next morning arrived with a hangover that felt like her skull was cracking open and a text message from an unknown number. Did you sleep? Sienna stared at the message through squinted eyes, her brain moving like concrete. It took her a full 30 seconds to remember the phone call. The voice. Lucien. She should have deleted the message, should have blocked the number. Instead, she typed back, "Not really." His response came immediately. "Eat something. Drink water. Don't let him take more from you than he already has." She sat on the edge of her bed in yesterday's clothes, staring at that message like it might explain itself. This man, this stranger, was telling her to take care of herself. Men didn't do that. Not in Sienna's experience. Men took what they wanted and left damage in their wake. "Why do you care?" she typed. The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "I don't know yet." That answer should have scared her. Instead, it made something warm unfold in her chest, dangerous and stupid. Over the next 3 days, Lucien kept texting her. Not constantly, not overwhelming, just enough to make her feel like someone was paying attention. He asked if she ate, if she slept, if she was okay. Simple questions that shouldn't have mattered, but somehow did because no one else was asking them. Sienna's friends had stopped checking in after the first round of "I'm fine" responses. Her mother was 3 states away dealing with her own problems. Marcus had blocked her on everything after she'd sent 5 more angry messages to his actual number. But Lucien kept showing up in her phone like a heartbeat. Steady, present. She still didn't know anything about him except his name and his voice and the way he seemed to know exactly when she needed someone to remind her she existed. On the 4th night, she finally asked, "Why are you doing this?" His response took longer this time. "Because I can hear it in your messages. You're drowning and no one's noticed." Sienna's eyes burned. She blinked hard against the sting. "You don't even know me. I'm starting to." That should have been creepy, should have sent every warning bell in her head screaming. But loneliness has a way of making danger feel like comfort, and Sienna was so tired of feeling invisible. She started telling him things. Small things at first. How she hated her job at the marketing firm where she wrote copy for products she'd never buy. How her apartment was too expensive but she couldn't afford to move. How Marcus had been her first real relationship and she'd thought he was the one. Lucien listened, never judged, never told her what she should feel. And slowly, without meaning to, Sienna started looking forward to his messages the way other people looked forward to going home. The problem started the following Tuesday. Sienna left work late, the sky already dark and threatening rain again. She cut through the subway station at Union Square, earbuds in, exhausted down to her bones. She didn't notice Marcus until he grabbed her wrist. "We need to talk." Sienna yanked her arm back, heart slamming into her throat. "Don't touch me." Marcus looked terrible. Unshaven, bags under his eyes. "Good. You blocked me on everything," he said. "I can't even—" "Because you cheated on me." Sienna's voice came out louder than she meant. A few people glanced their way. She didn't care. "You don't get to talk to me anymore." "It was a mistake. I was drunk and she—" "I don't care." Sienna tried to walk past him. He moved to block her path. "Sienna, please, just give me 5 minutes." "No." She shoved past him. He grabbed her wrist again, harder this time, fingers digging in. "You're being dramatic," Marcus hissed. "It was one time. You're acting like I—" Someone cleared their throat behind them. Sienna turned. Two men stood there, big, broad-shouldered, wearing dark suits that looked too expensive for the subway. They weren't looking at her. They were looking at Marcus with the kind of focus that made the air feel thin. "The lady asked you to leave," one of them said quietly. Marcus's hand dropped from her wrist. "Who the hell are you?" They didn't answer. They didn't move. They just stood there radiating the kind of threat that didn't need words. Marcus looked between them and Sienna, confusion and anger warring on his face. Did you hire bodyguards? Are you serious right now?" "I didn't," Sienna started, but her voice died. Because she didn't hire anyone. She didn't know these men. But she had a terrible feeling she knew who sent them. Marcus backed up a step, then another. "You're insane," he spat at Sienna. "You're actually insane." He disappeared into the crowd, half running like something was chasing him. The two men turned to Sienna. The one who'd spoken gave a small nod. "Have a good evening, ma'am." Then they were gone too, melting into the flow of commuters like they'd never been there at all. Sienna stood frozen in the middle of the subway station, her wrists still aching where Marcus had grabbed her, her mind racing. She pulled out her phone with shaking hands and typed, "Did you send people to follow me?" Lucien's response came within seconds. "Are you safe?" "Answer the question. Yes." Sienna's stomach dropped. "Why?" "Because he hurt you. He grabbed my wrist. That's not—" "He put his hands on you without permission. That's enough." She stared at that message, torn between fury and something else, something that felt dangerously close to relief. "You can't just send people to intimidate my ex-boyfriend. This is crazy. I can, and I did. And he won't touch you again. You don't get to make that choice." "I already made it." Sienna wanted to scream. She wanted to throw her phone. She wanted to understand why her hands were shaking and why part of her was glad, deeply, terrifyingly glad, that someone had stood between her and Marcus's anger. "Who are you?" she typed. The three dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "Someone who doesn't let people get hurt when I can stop it." That wasn't an answer. That was a deflection wrapped in a promise. "I want to meet you," Sienna typed before she could stop herself. This time the pause was longer, long enough that she thought maybe he wouldn't respond at all. Then, "You shouldn't." "Why not?" "Because once you see who I am, you can't unsee it, and I'm not ready to lose you yet." Those words hit her like a fist to the chest. Lose her, like she was already his to lose. "I need to know who you are," she insisted. "I need to know who I've been talking to for 2 weeks." Another long pause. Saturday, 8 p.m. The restaurant on top of the Williamson Building in Manhattan. "Come alone." Then nothing. Sienna stood in the subway station holding her phone, aware that she'd just agreed to meet a stranger who'd sent men to intimidate her ex-boyfriend. A stranger who knew where she was and what was happening to her before she told him. A stranger who might be the most dangerous person she'd ever encountered. She should have called the police, should have blocked his number and moved apartments and disappeared. Instead, she went home and started planning what to wear on Saturday night. The Williamson Building was the kind of place Sienna had only seen in movies. All glass and steel rising into the Manhattan skyline like a middle finger to gravity. The rooftop restaurant required a reservation made months in advance and a credit card that didn't flinch at 3-figure entrees. Sienna didn't have a reservation. When she gave her name at the host stand, the man's expression shifted from polite dismissal to something careful, almost nervous. "Of course, Ms. Vale. Right this way." He led her through a dining room that looked like it had been designed by someone who thought money could buy taste, and usually they were right. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Manhattan, glittering in the darkness. Chandeliers that probably cost more than her car. White tablecloths and crystal that caught the light like trapped stars. Everyone here looked rich. Not just wealthy, rich in that bone-deep way that came from generations of never having to think about money. Sienna felt like an imposter in her best dress. Black, simple, bought on sale 2 years ago. The host brought her to a table by the windows, empty except for 2 place settings and a bottle of wine already breathing. "Mr. Knox will join you shortly," the host said, then vanished. Knox. So that was Lucien's last name. Sienna sat down and tried not to fidget. Her heart was doing something complicated in her chest. Part excitement, part dread, all adrenaline. She was about to meet the stranger who'd inserted himself into her life with the subtlety of a blade between ribs. 10 minutes passed, then 15. Sienna started to wonder if this was some kind of joke, if she'd been set up, if... Sienna, she turned. The man standing beside her table didn't look real. He looked like something carved from expensive stone and dressed in a suit that probably cost more than 3 months of her rent. Tall, broad-shouldered, dark hair pushed back from a face that was all sharp edges and brutal symmetry. But it was his eyes that stopped her breath. Dark, intense, the kind of eyes that saw everything and gave nothing back. This was Lucien Knox. And Sienna understood immediately that she'd made a terrible mistake coming here. "You came," he said, his voice the same one she'd heard on the phone 2 weeks ago. Controlled. Certain. "You invited me." Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "Would have been rude not to show up." A ghost of a smile touched his mouth. "May I sit?" She nodded because words had temporarily abandoned her. Lucien sat across from her with the kind of grace that spoke of complete control over his body. He poured wine into her glass without asking, then his own. His hands were scarred across the knuckles, working hands despite the expensive suit. "You're staring," he said. "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" Sienna picked up her wine glass just to have something to hold. "I don't know, someone older maybe? Less..." She stopped herself. "Less what?" "Dangerous." The word hung between them like smoke. Lucien didn't deny it, didn't soften it. He just watched her with those dark eyes that seemed to catalog every breath she took. "I told you that you shouldn't meet me," he said quietly. "Too late now." "It's not. You can walk away right now. Block my number. Forget this happened." "Can I?" Sienna leaned forward. "You sent men to follow me, Lucien. You knew Marcus grabbed me before I told you. How long have you been watching me?" Something flickered in his expression. Not guilt. Something harder to name. "Since the night you sent me that message." The honesty of it punched through her. "Why?" "Because I heard something in your voice that night." His jaw tightened. "Something broken. And I've spent my entire life around broken things. I know what happens when no one pays attention." "So you decided to pay attention to me? A complete stranger?" "Yes. That's not normal. I'm not a normal man, Sienna." She believed him. Everything about him screamed danger wrapped in control. The way he sat, the way he spoke, the way other diners kept glancing toward their table and then quickly looking away like they'd seen something they shouldn't. "What do you do?" she asked. "For work?" "Private security, among other things." "What other things?" His smile was sharp enough to cut. "Things you're better off not knowing about. Try me." Lucien studied her for a long moment. Then he leaned back in his chair, wine glass balanced in one scarred hand. "I run an organization that operates in spaces between legal and illegal. We provide protection for people who can't go to the police. We handle problems that don't have clean solutions. And sometimes..." He paused. "Sometimes we do things that would make you walk out of this restaurant and never look back." Sienna should have been terrified, should have thrown her wine in his face and run. Instead, she asked, "Have you killed people?" "Yes." No hesitation, no remorse, just fact delivered like he was telling her the weather. "Jesus," Sienna breathed. "You should leave." Lucien's voice went flat. "You should leave right now and forget you ever met me." "Why did you invite me here if you're just going to tell me to leave?" "Because I wanted to see your face when you realized what I am." His eyes burned into hers. "I wanted to watch you understand that whatever you think is happening between us can't happen, because I'm not the kind of man who gets to have..." He stopped, shook his head. "You deserve better than this." Sienna's heart was hammering so hard she could feel it in her throat. "What if I don't want better? What if I want to understand why a man who kills people for a living spent 2 weeks making sure I ate and slept and didn't drown in my own heartbreak?" Lucien's expression cracked. Just for a second. Just enough for her to see something raw underneath all that control. "Because you reminded me what it feels like to care about something other than survival," he said roughly, "and that makes you the most dangerous person I've ever met." The words landed between them like a confession and a threat all at once. Sienna reached across the table. Her hand covered his. His skin was warm and his fingers were scarred, and she had no idea what she was doing, but she couldn't stop herself. "I'm not leaving," she said. "You should." "I know." Lucien's hand turned under hers, his fingers lacing through hers with a grip that felt like an anchor and a warning. "If you stay," he said quietly, "everything changes. I can't protect you from myself, Sienna. I can't promise I won't pull you into my world and keep you there. Maybe I want to be kept." His eyes went dark, darker than before, like something inside him had just broken free. "You don't know what you're saying." "Then show me." For a moment she thought he might actually walk away, might do the right thing and disappear from her life forever. Instead, Lucien stood, still holding her hand, and pulled her to her feet. "Come with me," he said. And because Sienna Vale had always been better at falling than flying, she followed him out of the restaurant and into the dark. The elevator descended in silence, broken only by the hum of machinery and Sienna's pulse hammering in her ears. Lucien stood beside her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating off him, far enough that the space between them felt deliberate, calculated. His hand had released hers the moment the elevator doors closed. Sienna stared at the brushed steel doors, watching their distorted reflections. She looked small next to him, breakable. "Where are we going?" Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "Somewhere we can talk without an audience." The elevator opened onto an underground parking garage that smelled like concrete and exhaust. A black SUV waited near the entrance, engine already running. The driver wore the same kind of dark suit as the men who'd confronted Marcus at the subway station. Lucien opened the back door for her, a gesture that might have been gentlemanly if it didn't feel like a choice she couldn't refuse. Sienna slid into leather seats that probably cost more than her entire car. Lucien followed, closing the door with a soft click that sounded too much like a lock engaging. The SUV pulled smoothly into Manhattan traffic. Rain had started again, streaking the windows with light from passing street lamps. "You're not going to tell me where we're going, are you?" Sienna asked. "My apartment." Her stomach tightened. "That's direct." "Would you prefer I lie to you?" "I'd prefer you ask instead of assume I'm coming." Lucien turned to look at her fully for the first time since they'd left the restaurant. His eyes were impossibly dark in the dim interior of the car. "Do you want me to take you home, Sienna?" The question hung between them like a blade. Yes would be the smart answer, the safe answer, the answer that would let her walk away from whatever this was before it consumed her completely. "No," she said. Something dangerous flickered across his expression. Relief, maybe, or hunger. Hard to tell the difference. They didn't speak for the rest of the drive. But Lucien's apartment occupied the top floor of a building in Tribeca that looked like it had been designed by someone who confused wealth with intimidation. The elevator required a key card. The hallway was empty and silent as a tomb. The door opened onto a space that stole Sienna's breath. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Manhattan glittering in the rain. Minimalist furniture that looked expensive because it was. Everything in shades of black and gray and chrome, like the inside of a very beautiful prison. "This is where you live?" Sienna walked toward the windows, trying not to let the opulence overwhelm her. "When I'm not working." "Which is never, I'm guessing." "You'd guess right." She turned to face him. Lucien had shrugged out of his suit jacket and was pouring whiskey into 2 crystal glasses. He moved through the space with the ease of someone who owned everything he touched. "You said you wanted to show me," Sienna said. "So show me. Who are you, really?" Lucien handed her one of the glasses. Their fingers brushed. He didn't pull away. "I told you at the restaurant. I run an organization that operates outside the law. That's not an answer. That's a job description." His jaw tightened. "What do you want me to say?" "The truth. All of it." Lucien drained half his whiskey in one swallow. Then he set the glass down with enough force that Sienna heard it crack. "Fine. You want the truth?" His voice went hard, cold. "My father built an empire on violence and fear. When he died, I inherited it. I was 19 years old and suddenly responsible for keeping dozens of families employed in businesses that would get them arrested or killed if they talked to the wrong people. So I learned. I learned how to intimidate and negotiate and hurt people efficiently when intimidation didn't work. I turned my father's chaotic mess into something that actually functioned. And yes, that means I've killed people. It means I've ordered people killed. It means there are men in this city who hear my name and cross the street. He took a step closer, then another, until Sienna could count the shades of darkness in his eyes. I'm not a good man, Lucien continued quietly. I'm the man people call when they need problems solved, and they don't care how it gets done. And the worst part, the part that should make you run, is that I'm good at it. I'm very good at hurting people who deserve it, and sometimes people who don't. Sienna's heart was doing something complicated in her chest. She should have been terrified. Every instinct should have been screaming at her to leave. Instead, she asked, "Do you regret it?" The question seemed to catch him off guard. What? The things you've done, the people you've hurt. Do you regret any of it? Lucien stared at her like she'd asked him something in a language he didn't speak. Then he laughed, a rough, broken sound. No, that's the truth you wanted, isn't it? I don't regret protecting my people. I don't regret building something that matters. And I sure as hell don't regret what I did to make sure your ex-boyfriend never touches you again. You didn't answer my question, Sienna said softly. I asked if you regret hurting people, not if you regret protecting them. His expression cracked, just slightly, just enough. There are things I've done that I can't take back, he said, finally. Things that keep me awake some nights. But regret is a luxury I can't afford. The moment I start second-guessing myself is the moment everything falls apart. Sienna set her untouched whiskey on the nearest surface. She took a step toward him, then another, until she was close enough to see the faint scar cutting through his left eyebrow. You keep trying to scare me away, she said. Why? Because you deserve better than this. Better than me. What if I get to decide what I deserve? Lucien's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone with a gentleness that didn't match anything else about him. You're going to destroy me, he said roughly. Then he kissed her. It wasn't gentle, wasn't careful. It was hunger and desperation and 3 weeks of tension finally snapping. Sienna's back hit the wall, and Lucien's hands were in her hair, and she was drowning in the taste of whiskey and the feeling of being wanted so completely it felt like violence. When they finally broke apart, both of them breathing hard, Lucien pressed his forehead against hers. Stay, he said. Not an order. A plea. So she did. Sienna woke to sunlight streaming through windows she didn't recognize, and sheets that felt like they cost more than her monthly rent. For a confused moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then she felt the warm weight of an arm draped across her waist, and everything came flooding back. Lucien. She'd stayed. She'd stayed and kissed him, and fallen asleep in his bed like this was something normal people did. Like he wasn't a criminal who'd admitted to killing people. Like she wasn't a marketing copywriter from Brooklyn who'd stumbled into this by accident. Sienna tried to ease out from under his arm without waking him. Failed immediately. Lucien's eyes opened, instantly alert in a way that suggested he didn't really sleep so much as temporarily power down. Morning, he said, his voice rough with sleep. Hi. Sienna suddenly felt intensely aware of how little clothing she was wearing. I should probably go. I have work tomorrow, and it's Sunday. Right, Sunday. She'd lost track of time somewhere between the restaurant and the whiskey and the kiss that had rearranged something fundamental in her chest. Still, she said, I should stay. Lucien's arm tightened around her waist. Have breakfast. Let me prove I can be normal for at least a few hours. The request was so unexpectedly vulnerable that Sienna found herself agreeing before her brain could catch up. They ate breakfast on his balcony overlooking the city. Lucien made coffee that tasted better than anything she'd ever bought at a cafe and scrambled eggs that were perfectly fluffy. He moved around the kitchen with the same controlled grace he brought to everything else. You cook, Sienna observed. I lived alone for a long time. It was either learn or eat takeout forever. Most men in your position would have staff. I did, for a while. Lucien set a plate in front of her. Turns out I don't like people in my space. But you invited me here? You're different. The way he said it, like fact instead of flattery, made her chest tight. They ate in comfortable silence for a while. The city stretched out below them, oblivious to the fact that Sienna's entire life had tilted sideways in the span of 12 hours. "Can I ask you something?" she said finally. "You can ask. I might not answer." "Why me?" "Really? Why did you call me back that night instead of ignoring a drunk text from a stranger?" Lucien was quiet for a long moment, staring out at Manhattan like it might have answers. "I told you. I heard something in your voice." "That's not enough. People break up every day. People send angry messages every day. You don't hunt down all of them." "No." He looked at her then, something raw in his expression. "But most of them don't sound like they're drowning." The words hit her like a slap. "And you wanted to save me?" Bitterness crept into her voice. "Is that what this is? Some kind of rescue fantasy?" "No." Lucien's voice went hard. "I wanted to understand why a complete stranger made me feel something other than empty for the first time in 5 years. The confession hung between them, too honest and too dangerous. Sienna opened her mouth to respond, and her phone rang. She grabbed it from where it sat on the table. Unknown number. Again. "Don't answer that," Lucien said sharply, but Sienna had already swiped to accept. "Hello?" Silence. Then a voice, male, unfamiliar, carrying an edge like broken glass. "Sienna Vale?" Her stomach dropped. "Who is this?" "A friend. Tell Lucien Knox that taking someone's property has consequences." The line went dead. Sienna stared at her phone, blood roaring in her ears. Someone just called me. They knew my name. They knew yours." Lucien was already on his feet, phone pressed to his ear. "Nick, we have a breach. Trace the call that just came into Sienna's phone." He rattled off her number from memory. "Do it now." He hung up and turned to Sienna. All the vulnerability from breakfast had vanished, replaced by something cold and lethal. "What did they say?" "Something about taking someone's property?" Her hands were shaking. "What the hell is happening?" Lucien crossed to her, gripping her shoulders. "Listen to me carefully. Someone knows you're here. Someone knows you matter to me. That makes you a target." "A target for what?" "For people who want to hurt me." The reality of what he was saying crashed over her like cold water. This wasn't some movie. This wasn't romantic. This was real violence from real people who saw her as leverage. "I need to go home," Sienna said. "I need to leave right now." "No. You can't keep me here." "I'm not keeping you anywhere." Lucien's voice was steel wrapped in ice. "But if you leave this building without protection, you won't make it home. Do you understand? They called you. They know who you are, which means they've been watching long enough to learn where you live and work and what time you leave for coffee in the morning." Sienna's legs gave out. She sat down hard on the nearest chair. "This isn't happening," she whispered. "It is, and I'm sorry. I'm so goddamn sorry." Lucien crouched in front of her, forcing her to meet his eyes. "But I will keep you safe. I swear to you, no one is going to touch you." "How can you promise that?" "Because I'll burn this entire city down before I let anyone hurt you." The certainty in his voice should have scared her. Instead, it was the only thing keeping her from falling apart completely. Lucien made calls for the next 2 hours while Sienna sat on his couch trying to process the fact that her life had turned into a thriller she didn't ask to be in. Men arrived. 4 of them. All wearing variations of the same dark suits and dangerous expressions. They spoke to Lucien in low voices, glancing occasionally at Sienna like she was a problem that needed solving. "Who are they?" she asked when Lucien finally came back to sit beside her. "My security team." "You mean your criminals?" "Yes." At least he didn't bother lying. One of the men, tall, blonde, with a scar running from his temple to his jaw, approached them. "The call came from a burner phone," he said to Lucien, "triangulated to a location in Queens. By the time our people got there, it was torched. And the voice? Ran it through analysis. It's him." Lucien's expression went darker than Sienna had ever seen it. "Him who?" she demanded. The blonde man looked at Lucien, clearly waiting for permission. "Victor Sarno," Lucien said finally. "He runs a rival organization. We've had issues before." "Issues?" Sienna laughed, a broken, slightly hysterical sound. You mean like turf wars? Like gangster movie issues? Yes. Jesus Christ. She stood, pacing because staying still felt impossible. This is insane. I need to call the police. And tell them what? Lucian's voice was patient but firm. That you're being threatened by a criminal organization? That you're sleeping with another criminal who can't protect you through legal channels? The police can't help you, Sienna, not against Victor. So what am I supposed to do? Hide here forever? Until we handle it. Handle it meaning what? You're going to kill him? Lucien stood, closing the distance between them in 2 strides. If that's what it takes. Sienna stared at him, really seeing him for the first time. This was the man he'd tried to warn her about. The one who solved problems with violence. The one who wouldn't hesitate to destroy anyone who threatened what he wanted to keep. I want to go home, she said quietly. No. You can't make me stay. Watch me. The words were cold enough to make her flinch. So what? I'm a prisoner now? Anger flared hot in her chest, burning away the fear. You get to decide where I go and what I do because some asshole called my phone? I'm keeping you alive. By locking me in your apartment? By making sure Victor Sarno doesn't use you to send me a message. The blonde man cleared his throat. Boss, we should move her to the safe house. Lucien shook his head. No, she stays here where you can watch her, Sienna cut in. I'm not a possession, Lucien. I'm a person, and I didn't sign up for any of this. You stayed. His voice went low. Dangerous. You stayed and you kissed me and you slept in my bed. You don't get to pretend this isn't real now. I stayed because I thought... She stopped herself. It doesn't matter what I thought. This is insane. You're right. It is insane. Lucien's control was fracturing. She could see it in the tension of his shoulders, the way his hands curled into fists. You want to leave? Fine. Walk out that door. I'll make sure Victor knows you mean nothing to me. That you were just a distraction. You're lying. I'm very good at lying. Sienna's eyes burned. She refused to cry in front of him, refused to give him that. I need air, she said. I need to think. You can think here. I can't breathe here. Something in her voice must have reached him because Lucien's expression softened fractionally. The balcony, he said. You can go to the balcony, but you don't leave this apartment. Not until we know what Victor's planning. It wasn't freedom, but it was something. Sienna walked out onto the balcony and gripped the railing hard enough that her knuckles went white. The city sprawled below her, indifferent to the fact that her entire world had just imploded. She'd walked into this with her eyes open. Lucien had warned her, had told her exactly what he was. But knowing something intellectually and feeling it in your bones were 2 very different things. Behind her, through the glass, she could see Lucien talking with his men. His expression was carved from stone, unreadable. The man who'd made her breakfast and told her she was destroying him had vanished behind layers of control and violence. Sienna's phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out. Another unknown number. Another message. You have 48 hours to walk away from Lucien Knox. After that, we stop asking nicely. Her hand shook so badly, she nearly dropped the phone. She turned. Lucien was watching her through the glass, his expression sharp enough to cut. Sienna held up her phone. He crossed the balcony in 3 long strides and took it from her, reading the message with eyes that had gone completely flat. Nick, he called back inside. Get me everything on Victor's operations in the last 72 hours. Bank movements, property acquisitions, personnel changes, everything. Boss? Now. The blonde man disappeared. Lucien looked at Sienna. You're not going anywhere. You keep saying that like I have a choice. You don't. The honesty of it was almost refreshing. Almost. So what happens now? Sienna's voice came out smaller than she wanted. Now we wait. We figure out what Victor wants, and we give him something else. What does he want? Lucien's jaw tightened. Me? He wants to destroy everything I've built. You're just leverage. How comforting. Sienna, don't. She held up a hand. Don't apologize. Don't tell me you'll fix this. Just don't. She walked past him, back into the apartment. The men stopped talking when she entered. She ignored them and headed for the bedroom, closing the door behind her with enough force to make her point. Sienna sat on the edge of the bed where she'd slept, wrapped in Lucien's arms just hours ago, and tried to remember how to breathe normally. Her phone buzzed again. She looked at the screen, half expecting another threat. Instead, it was a news alert, a headline that made her blood run cold. Breaking: fire in Queens, apartment building leaves 3 dead. Police investigating possible arson. Sienna clicked through to the article. The address was in the same neighborhood where Victor's burner phone had been traced. 3 bodies. Unidentified. Burned beyond recognition. She stared at the screen, nausea rising in her throat. A knock on the door made her jump. "Sienna!" Lucien's voice. "Can I come in?" She didn't answer. He came in anyway. "You saw the news," he said. Not a question. "Did you do that?" She couldn't look at him. "Those people, did you kill them?" "No." "But your people did." Lucien was quiet for a moment. "We're investigating Victor's operation. Sometimes investigations get messy." Messy. The word tasted like ashes. 3 people are dead. 3 people who work for a man trying to hurt you. You don't know that. She finally looked up at him. You don't know they were guilty of anything except being in the wrong place. You're right, I don't. Lucien's expression was carved from ice. And I don't care. Victor made you a target. Anyone working for him chose their side. That's not how this works. You can't just... I can. He crossed his arms. And I will. You want to hate me for it? Fine, but I'm not going to apologize for protecting you. Sienna stood, anger finally overwhelming fear. I never asked you to protect me. I never asked for any of this. You inserted yourself into my life. You watched me. You sent men to follow me. You pulled me into your world without asking if that's what I wanted. You could have walked away. When? When was I supposed to walk away? After the first text? After you sent men to intimidate my ex? After you invited me to dinner? After you... Her voice cracked. After you made me believe that maybe someone actually gave a damn about whether I was okay? The words hung between them like broken glass. Lucien's expression didn't change. I do give a damn. No, you're obsessed. That's different. Maybe. He took a step closer. But obsession is all I have to offer, and you knew that before you got in my car last night. He was right. She had known. Some part of her had recognized the danger and walked toward it anyway because loneliness made terrible decisions feel like salvation. I can't do this, Sienna said quietly. I can't be the thing someone burns the world down for. That's not love. That's possession. You're right. Lucien's voice went soft, dangerous. It is possession, and I won't apologize for it. You're mine, Sienna. The moment you stayed, you became mine, and I protect what's mine. The certainty in his voice should have terrified her. Instead, it made something dark and hungry uncoil in her chest. You don't own me, she said, but it came out weaker than she meant. Then leave. Lucien moved closer, backing her against the wall. Walk out that door. Go back to your apartment and your job and your ordinary life. Forget you ever met me. You said I can't leave. I lied. His hand came up to cup her face, thumb tracing her jaw. You can always leave, Sienna. I'll even make sure Victor knows you mean nothing to me. I'll keep you safe from a distance. You're lying again. Yes. His forehead touched hers. I'm lying. Because if you walk out that door, I'll follow you. I'll watch you from the shadows. I'll make sure you're safe even if you hate me for it, because I can't seem to stop. Sienna's breath caught. That's not healthy. I never claimed it was. She should have pushed him away. Should have demanded he let her go. Should have done anything except reach up and pull his mouth down to hers in a kiss that tasted like anger and desperation, and something that felt dangerously close to surrender. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Lucien's eyes were nearly black. Stay, he said again. Stay until this is over, then decide if you want to walk away. And because Sienna had always been better at falling than saving herself, she nodded. The next 2 days passed in a strange suspension of reality. Sienna called in sick to work. What else could she do? Tell her boss she couldn't come in because she was hiding from a crime lord in another crime lord's apartment? Lucien's men came and went at all hours. She learned their names: Nick, the blonde one with the scar; Marcus, not her ex; A different Marcus, shorter and built like violence compressed into a human shape. Elena, a woman with dark eyes who looked at Sienna like she was evaluating whether she was worth protecting. They spoke in code she didn't understand, moved with purpose she couldn't track. Lucien barely slept. She'd wake in the middle of the night to find his side of the bed empty, then discover him in his office making calls or staring at his computer screen with eyes that had gone somewhere dark. On the second night, Sienna found him standing on the balcony at 3 in the morning, staring out at the city. She wrapped a blanket around herself and joined him in the cold. "You should be sleeping," Lucien said without looking at her. "So should you." "Can't. Because of Victor?" "Because of you." The honesty of it made her chest tight. "I'm fine. For now." He finally turned to face her. In the darkness, his expression was all shadows. He's escalating. Every hour that passes, he gets bolder. What does he want? Leverage. Power. A chance to prove he's more dangerous than I am. And am I? Leverage? Lucien's hands gripped the railing hard enough that his knuckles went white. "You're the only leverage that would work. Because you care about me. Because I love you." The words fell between them like stones into water. Sienna stopped breathing. "You don't. You can't." "I can, and I do." Lucien's voice was raw, stripped of all the control he usually wielded like armor. "I've loved you since the moment I heard your voice crack on that phone call, since you told a stranger you were drowning and trusted that he'd care. I love you, and it's going to get you killed." Tears burned in her eyes. "That's not love, I know what it is." He cut her off. "I know it's obsession and possession and every unhealthy thing you can name, but it's also the only real thing I've felt in years. So call it whatever you want. It doesn't change the fact that I'd rather die than let Victor touch you." Sienna reached for him, her hand finding his in the darkness. "Lucien." Her phone rang. They both froze. It was lying on the coffee table inside, ringing, vibrating, demanding attention. Lucien moved first, crossing into the apartment and grabbing the phone. Unknown number. He answered on speaker. "Victor." A laugh came through, cold, amused. "Lucien Knox, still playing hero? What do you want?" "What I've always wanted. Your empire, your reputation, your blood on my hands." Victor's voice was almost cheerful. "But I'm willing to negotiate." "Negotiate what?" "The girl for your business. Walk away from everything you've built. Dismantle your organization. Disappear. And I'll forget she exists." Lucien's expression went deadly calm. "No." "No? Just like that? You don't get to threaten her. You don't get to use her. And you sure as hell don't get to negotiate with me using her as leverage." "Then I guess we do this the hard way." Victor's voice went cold. 48 hours, Lucien. Then I stopped being polite." The line went dead. Sienna stared at the phone, then at Lucien. His expression was carved from stone, but she could see the rage burning behind his eyes. "He's going to come after me," she said. "No matter what you do. He's going to use me to destroy you." "No." Lucien's voice was steel wrapped in ice. "He's not. You can't protect me forever. Watch me." But even as he said it, Sienna saw the truth in his eyes. This wasn't going to end with negotiations, wasn't going to end with her walking away safe and whole. This was going to end in blood. And she'd just run out of time to decide which side of that bloodshed she wanted to be on when it happened. Lucien made a single phone call after Victor hung up. His voice was flat, dead. The kind of tone that suggested he'd already decided who was going to die and was just working out the logistics. "Nick, I need the safe house prepped in 20 minutes. Full security detail. No one gets within a mile of that location without going through me first." He ended the call and turned to Sienna. "Pack whatever you need for a few days." "Where are we going?" "Somewhere Victor can't find you." "Lucien, don't argue with me. Not about this." The command in his voice left no room for negotiation. Sienna went to the bedroom and threw clothes into a bag with shaking hands. Everything felt surreal, like she was watching herself from outside her body. 48 hours. That's all the time they had before Victor stopped making threats and started making them reality. She found Lucien in his office, standing in front of a wall-mounted safe she hadn't noticed before. He spun the combination lock with practiced efficiency and pulled out a handgun. Sienna's stomach dropped. What are you doing? Making sure you're protected. He checked the magazine, chambered a round, and set it on his desk. Then he pulled out a second gun. And a third. Jesus Christ, Lucien, how many weapons do you have? Enough. He glanced at her. Do you know how to shoot? No. Then you're going to learn. I can't. You can. He picked up the smallest handgun and held it out to her. Because if something happens to me, you need to be able to protect yourself. Nothing's going to happen to you. You don't know that. Sienna stared at the gun like it might bite her. I'm not touching that. Sienna? No. Her voice came out louder than she intended. I'm not becoming part of this. I'm not learning to shoot people. I can't. Lucien set the gun down and crossed to her, gripping her shoulders. Look at me. She did. His eyes were dark and intense and completely focused on her. Victor Sarno is coming for you, he said quietly. Not because of anything you did, because of me. Because I was stupid enough to let him see that you matter. So you have two choices. You can learn to defend yourself, or you can trust that I'll always be there to do it for you. I trust you. That's a mistake. The words hit her like a slap. What? Trusting me is a mistake, Sienna. I'm good at what I do, but I'm not invincible. If Victor gets past my people, if something happens and I can't reach you, his jaw tightened. I need to know you can protect yourself, even if it's just long enough for help to arrive. Sienna's hands were shaking. She looked at the gun sitting on the desk, then back at Lucien. Okay, she whispered. Okay, teach me. He spent the next 15 minutes showing her how to hold the weapon, how to aim, how to breathe and squeeze the trigger instead of pulling it. His hands were steady on hers, guiding her through motions that felt foreign and terrible. If you have to shoot someone, Lucien said quietly, don't hesitate. Don't think. Just pull the trigger and keep pulling until they stop moving. I don't think I can do that. You can. If your life depends on it, you'll be surprised what you're capable of. Something in his voice suggested he was speaking from experience. A knock on the door interrupted them. Nick appeared, his expression grim. Safe house is ready. 2 teams in position. Route's been swept 3 times. Lucien nodded. Let's move. But the safe house was an apartment in a building Sienna didn't recognize, tucked away in a neighborhood that looked too ordinary to be hiding anything dangerous. 3 bedrooms, reinforced windows, security cameras covering every angle. 4 armed men waited inside. They nodded at Lucien with the kind of respect that came from fear and loyalty mixed together. No one comes in or out without my authorization, Lucien told them. I don't care if it's the mayor. You verify identity 3 times before opening that door. Yes, sir. Sienna sat on the couch and tried to process the fact that her life now required armed guards and reinforced windows. This wasn't real, couldn't be real. Lucien sat beside her, close enough that their knees touched. I need to go handle some things. Her head snapped up. You're leaving? For a few hours. I need to make sure Victor understands that threatening you was the last mistake he'll ever make. Lucien, don't. I'll be back before midnight. He cupped her face, forcing her to look at him. You're safe here. These men will die before they let anyone through that door. That's not comforting. It's the truth. He kissed her forehead, gentle, at odds with everything else about him. Stay inside. Don't answer the door for anyone but me. And if something goes wrong, nothing's going to go wrong. If something goes wrong, he continued as if she hadn't spoken, there's a panic room behind the bookshelf in the master bedroom. Lock yourself inside and wait for me. Sienna's throat tightened. You're scaring me. Good. You should be scared. Fear keeps you alert. He stood, already pulling his phone out, already shifting back into the cold, controlled version of himself that led men into violence. Sienna watched him leave, surrounded by his security team. The door closed with a heavy click that sounded too much like a cell door locking. One of the guards, a man with dark hair and a face that looked like it had been broken and reset multiple times, approached her. Ms. Vale, I'm David. If you need anything, just ask. I need this to be over. David's expression softened fractionally. We all do, ma'am. Sienna retreated to the master bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall where Lucien said the panic room was hidden. She couldn't see any seams, couldn't tell where the bookshelf ended and the secret entrance began. Her phone buzzed. She pulled it out, expecting Lucien checking in. Instead, it was a text from a number she didn't recognize. "He's lying to you." Sienna's blood went cold. She stared at the message, fingers frozen on the screen. Another text came through. "Ask him about Elena." Elena. The dark-eyed woman who worked for Lucien, the one who'd looked at Sienna like she was evaluating whether she was worth the trouble. Sienna's hands shook as she typed, "Who is this?" The response was immediate. "Someone who knows what Lucien Knox really is. Check his office. Bottom drawer, right side desk." "This is Victor, isn't it? This is someone trying to save your life." Sienna wanted to throw the phone, wanted to show David and let him trace the number, wanted to tell Lucien. Instead, she stared at that message and felt doubt creep in like poison. What did she really know about Lucien? He'd admitted to killing people, to running a criminal empire, to doing things that kept him awake at night. But what if there were worse things he hadn't told her? Sienna walked out of the bedroom. David looked up from his position by the window. "Everything okay, ma'am? I need to go back to Lucien's apartment. I can't authorize that. I'm not asking permission. I'm telling you I'm going." David's expression hardened. "Boss's orders were clear. You stay here. And if I walk out that door anyway, then I stop you." Sienna crossed her arms. "You going to shoot me, David?" "No, ma'am. But I will call Mr. Knox and let him know you're refusing protection." That was enough of a threat. Lucien would be furious, would probably drag her back here himself. But the doubt was eating at her now, growing with every second that passed. Check his office. Bottom drawer, right side desk. "Fine," Sienna said. "I'll stay." David nodded and returned to watching the window. Sienna went back to the bedroom and closed the door. Her heart was hammering against her ribs. This was stupid, dangerous, exactly the kind of thing that got people killed in movies. But she had to know. She pulled out her phone and called Lucy. It went straight to voicemail. Tried again. Same result. He was probably in a meeting or doing something illegal that required his full attention. Sienna stared at the panic room entrance hidden behind the bookshelf. Then she made a decision that would change everything. She opened the bedroom window. It didn't have bars, didn't have an alarm, because they were on the third floor and no one expected her to be stupid enough to climb out. But there was a fire escape. Sienna threw on her jacket, grabbed her bag, and squeezed through the window before she could second-guess herself. The metal fire escape rattled under her weight. Cold air bit at her face. She climbed down as quietly as possible, expecting David to burst through the window at any second. He didn't. She reached the alley behind the building and ran. Getting into Lucien's apartment building was easier than it should have been. The doorman recognized her from 2 nights ago and waved her through without question. The elevator ride felt like it took a year. Her hands were shaking when she unlocked Lucien's door with the spare key he'd given her that morning, like he'd known she'd need it, like he'd wanted her to be able to come and go, or like he'd wanted her to feel like she had freedom while he controlled everything. The apartment was empty, silent. She stood in the entryway for a moment, listening to her own breathing. This was insane. She was breaking into her, what? Boyfriend's? Captor's? Apartment based on an anonymous text that was probably from the man trying to kill her. But she was already here, already committed. Sienna crossed to Lucien's office. The desk was exactly as he'd left it, neat, organized, nothing out of place. She opened the bottom right drawer. Files. Dozens of them. All labeled with names she didn't recognize. She pulled them out one by one, scanning contents that made her stomach turn. Surveillance photos, financial records, background checks detailed enough to be invasive. Then she found one labeled with her own name, Sienna Vale. Her hands went numb. She opened the file with fingers that felt like they belonged to someone else. Inside were photos of her, dozens of them. Some recent, from the last few weeks. Her leaving work, getting coffee, walking to the subway. But some were older, months older, from before she'd sent that text message, before she'd ever heard Lucien Knox's name. Her vision swam. She flipped through more pages. Background check. Employment history. Financial records. Her apartment lease. Her social media accounts. Everything about her life documented in clinical detail. There was a note paper-clipped to the front page, handwriting she didn't recognize. Per your request, full background on Sienna Vale, no criminal record, no concerning associations, finances stable, relationship status, involved with Marcus Chen for 3 years. Recommendation, low-risk target for initial contact phase. Target, initial contact phase. Sienna's legs gave out. She sat down hard on Lucien's chair, the file still open in her lap. This wasn't an accident, wasn't a wrong number, wasn't fate or coincidence or any of the things she'd told herself. Lucien had been watching her for months, had researched her, had known about Marcus, had known everything, and then he'd answered her text like it was destiny bringing them together. The door to the office opened. Sienna's head snapped up. Elena stood in the doorway, the dark-eyed woman who'd evaluated Sienna like a problem to be solved. "You shouldn't be here," Elena said quietly. "Who are you?" Sienna's voice came out raw. "Really, who are you to him?" Elena stepped into the office and closed the door behind her. "I'm the person who handles the things Lucien doesn't want to get his hands dirty with." "Like researching me? Like taking photos of me for months before he ever called me?" "Yes." The simple honesty of it was worse than a lie. "Why?" Sienna stood, the file falling from her lap and scattering across the floor. "Why would he do that?" Elena picked up one of the photos. Sienna leaving her apartment building, coffee in hand, completely unaware she was being watched. "Because Lucien Knox doesn't do anything by accident," Elena said. "He saw you one day, completely random. You were sitting in a coffee shop looking like the world had crushed you, and something about you caught his attention, so he had me investigate." "When?" The word came out like broken glass. 4 months ago." 4 months. 4 months before Sienna had even broken up with Marcus. 4 months of being watched and studied and evaluated like a science experiment. "The wrong number," Sienna whispered. "It wasn't wrong, was it? He had your people intercept my message somehow. He made sure it came to him." Elena was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded. "He had your phone flagged. Any message sent to a number similar to your boyfriend's was rerouted to him. He'd been waiting for you to reach out to someone, anyone, so he could insert himself into your life." The room tilted. Sienna gripped the edge of the desk to keep from falling. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you deserve to know what you're mixed up in." Elena's expression was cold, professional. "Lucien Knox is obsessed with you, has been since the moment he saw you. And obsession makes him dangerous, not to you, never to you, but to everyone around you." "Victor Sarno," Sienna said. "The threats, is any of it real?" "Oh, it's real." Elena pulled out her phone and showed Sienna a photo. A man with salt and pepper hair and eyes like a shark. "Victor's very real. And very angry that Lucien's been consolidating power in territories Victor considers his. But the timing of his threats? That was Lucien's doing." "What?" "Lucien provoked him, pushed into his operations, made sure Victor would retaliate, because he needed you to need him, needed you to depend on him for protection." Sienna was going to be sick. "That's insane. Yes, but it worked, didn't it? You're here, you're his. Exactly like he planned." The door burst open. Lucien stood in the doorway, his expression thunderous. "Elena, get out." Elena didn't move. "She deserves the truth." "I said get out." The command in his voice was absolute. Elena held his gaze for a moment, then walked past him without another word. The door clicked shut behind her. Lucien looked at Sienna, at the files scattered across the floor, at her face that probably showed every emotion rioting through her. "Let me explain," he said. "Explain?" Sienna's voice cracked. "You've been stalking me for 4 months. You manipulated me. You made me think—" She couldn't finish, couldn't put into words how thoroughly he'd destroyed her. "I didn't manipulate you. You intercepted my message. You researched every part of my life. You made me fall for you using information you stole. I made you fall for me by being there when no one else was." Lucien stepped into the office. "Everything I told you was true. I did hear something in your voice that night. I did want to understand why you made me feel something real. After you'd already been watching me for months." "Yes." At least he didn't bother lying. "And Victor?" Sienna demanded. "Elena said you provoked him, that you made him come after me." Lucian's expression went carefully blank. I made strategic moves in territories he considers his. That's business. That's not an answer. Yes, I knew he'd retaliate, and yes, I knew he'd target you once he realized you mattered to me. You used me as bait. I protected you. By putting me in danger in the first place, Sienna was shouting now. Didn't care. You created this entire situation so I'd have to depend on you, so I couldn't leave even if I wanted to. You're right. Lucien's voice was steel. I created a situation where you'd need me because I knew that if I approached you normally, you'd never look twice at a man like me. So yes, I manipulated circumstances. I made sure you felt seen and protected and valued, and I don't regret it. You should. I don't. He moved closer. She backed up until she hit the bookshelf. Because every moment with you has been real, Sienna. Every conversation, every touch, every time I told you I loved you, that was real. Built on lies. Built on obsession. There's a difference. Not one that matters. Lucien's hand slammed against the bookshelf beside her head. Not threatening, desperate. You want to hate me? Fine. Hate me for stalking you. Hate me for manipulating you. Hate me for every terrible thing I've done. But don't pretend what's between us isn't real. How can it be real when it's all based on you controlling every aspect of it? Because you feel it too. His forehead pressed against hers. Don't lie to me, Sienna. Don't tell me you don't feel this. She did. That was the worst part. Even knowing what he'd done, even understanding how thoroughly he'd orchestrated every moment between them, she still felt it, still wanted him with an intensity that made her hate herself. This is sick, she whispered. I know. We're sick. I know that too. Sienna pushed him away, put distance between them because being close to him made rational thought impossible. I'm leaving, she said. I'm walking out of here and you're not going to stop me. You can't. Watch me. Victor. I don't care about Victor. Her voice broke. I don't care about your war or your empire or any of it. I just want my life back. You can't have it back. Lucian's voice was flat, dead. Victor knows about you. He's already made threats. Whether you're with me or not, he'll use you to hurt me. Then I'll go to the police. And tell them what? That a man you can't identify threatened you? That you're sleeping with a criminal who can't protect you through legal channels? Lucien shook his head. The police can't help you. Only I can. By keeping me prisoner? By keeping you alive. Sienna laughed, a broken, hysterical sound. This is insane. You're insane. And I was stupid enough to fall for it. Her phone buzzed. She pulled it out. Another message from the unknown number. Are you starting to see what he really is? Lucian's expression darkened. Who's texting you? Someone who's telling me the truth. She held up the phone so he could see the message. His jaw tightened. That's Victor. Or someone trying to help me. It's Victor. Lucien's voice was hard. And whatever he's telling you is designed to separate you from me. To make you vulnerable. Maybe I should be separated from you. You don't mean that. Don't I? Her phone buzzed again. There's a car waiting downstairs. Black sedan. I can get you somewhere safe. Somewhere he'll never find you. Sienna stared at the message. This was insane. Victor was the enemy, the man threatening her life. But Lucien had been manipulating her for months, had orchestrated their entire relationship, had put her in danger deliberately. Which monster was worse? Don't, Lucien said quietly. Whatever you're thinking, don't. You don't get to tell me what to do anymore. Sienna, I'm leaving. She headed for the door. Don't follow me, don't call me, don't send your people after me. If you ever actually cared about me, you'll let me go. She made it 3 steps before Lucien moved. He was fast, faster than she'd expected. His hand closed around her wrist, spinning her back toward him. I can't let you walk into Victor's hands, he said roughly. Then you should have thought of that before you made me into bait. I'm trying to protect you. You're trying to control me. There's a difference. His grip tightened fractionally. If you walk out that door, you die. Do you understand? Victor will take you and he'll use you to destroy me, and then he'll kill you. That's how this ends if you leave. Maybe that's better than staying with you. The words hit him like a physical blow. His hand dropped from her wrist. You don't mean that, he said, but his voice was hollow now. Broken. Maybe I do. Sienna walked to the door. Her hand touched the handle. If you leave, Lucien said quietly, I won't stop you, but I also won't be able to protect you. And when Victor comes, and he will come, you'll be alone. She looked back at him, the man who'd orchestrated her entire life for months, the man who'd made her fall in love with a carefully constructed version of himself, the man who'd just admitted he'd put her in danger deliberately to keep her close. Good, Sienna said. Then she walked out. The lobby was empty. The doorman gave her a pleasant nod as she passed. Outside, Manhattan was bright and cold and indifferent to the fact that Sienna's entire world had just shattered. A black sedan sat at the curb, engine running, windows tinted. Sienna's heart hammered as she approached it. This was stupid. This was suicidal. This was exactly the kind of decision that got people killed. But staying with Lucien felt like drowning slowly, while someone promised to save her after pushing her into the water in the first place. The back door of the sedan opened. A man sat inside. Not Victor, someone younger, professional-looking in an expensive suit. He smiled at her like they were old friends. Ms. Vale, I'm glad you could join us. Mr. Sarno would very much like to meet you. Sienna's instinct screamed at her to run, to go back inside, to let Lucien protect her despite everything. Instead, she thought about the file full of photos, the months of surveillance, the careful manipulation of every moment between them. And she got in the car. The door closed behind her with a soft click. The sedan pulled away from the curb, leaving Lucien's building behind. Sienna's phone buzzed one more time. A message from Lucien. Whatever happens next, know that I love you. And I'm sorry. She stared at that message as the car drove deeper into the city, carrying her toward a man who wanted to destroy everything Lucien had built, including her. And somewhere in the back of her mind, Sienna realized with terrible clarity that she'd just made the worst decision of her life. But she'd rather die on her own terms than live as someone's carefully controlled obsession. The car turned down a street she didn't recognize, heading toward warehouses and industrial buildings where screams wouldn't carry. And Sienna understood that she'd traded one monster for another, but at least this time, she'd chosen which one would kill her. The sedan drove for 20 minutes through parts of the city Sienna had never seen. Industrial zones where buildings crouched like broken teeth against the skyline. Streets empty except for the occasional truck hauling cargo that probably shouldn't be examined too closely. She'd stopped checking her phone after the fifth message from Lucien went unanswered. Stopped trying to convince herself this wasn't the stupidest thing she'd ever done. The man in the suit beside her hadn't spoken since she'd gotten in the car. Just sat there with that pleasant smile that didn't reach his eyes, watching her like she was a package being delivered. Finally, the sedan pulled into a warehouse district where the buildings looked abandoned and the streetlights had been shot out years ago. It stopped in front of a structure that might have once been a shipping facility. Now it was just rust and broken windows and the kind of silence that came before violence. After you, Ms. Vale, the man said, opening his door. Sienna's hands were shaking as she climbed out. The air smelled like rain and oil and something metallic she didn't want to identify. Her phone buzzed again in her pocket. She ignored it. The warehouse door opened before they reached it. 2 more men in dark clothing, armed. They patted her down with efficiency that suggested they'd done this 1,000 times before. Took her phone, her keys, everything except the clothes on her back. Inside, one of them said. The warehouse interior was exactly what she'd expected. Concrete floors stained with things that had been cleaned up but never really disappeared. Metal beams overhead casting shadows in the weak light from industrial fixtures. Crates stacked against walls. A few chairs arranged in the center like someone was expecting a meeting. And standing beside those chairs, waiting with the patience of a man who knew he'd already won, was Victor Sarno. He looked nothing like the monster Sienna had built in her head. Average height, well-dressed, salt and pepper hair styled like he'd just come from a business lunch. The kind of man you'd walk past on the street without a second glance, except for his eyes. They were the eyes of something that had stopped being human a long time ago. Ms. Vale, his voice was cultured, smooth. Thank you for accepting my invitation. I didn't have much choice. There's always a choice. Victor gestured to one of the chairs. Please, sit. We have much to discuss. Sienna sat because her legs were shaking too badly to hold her up anymore. Victor took the chair across from her, crossing his legs like they were about to have tea. "I imagine you have questions," he said. "Why am I here?" "Because Lucien Knox cares about you, and I need something he cares about to destroy him properly." The casual way he said it made her stomach turn. "You're going to kill me." "Eventually, but not yet." Victor leaned forward slightly. "First, I'm going to let him know I have you. Then I'm going to give him a choice, his empire or your life, and we'll see which one he values more." "He'll choose his empire." "Will he?" Victor's smile widened. "You sound uncertain." Sienna was uncertain, because despite everything, despite the manipulation and the surveillance and the deliberate danger, she'd seen something real in Lucien's eyes when he'd said he loved her. Something that couldn't be completely faked. Or maybe that was just more manipulation. Maybe she was still falling for exactly what he wanted her to believe. "It doesn't matter what he chooses," she said. "You're going to kill me either way. Probably. But hope is important, don't you think? It's what keeps people fighting even when they should surrender." He pulled out a phone, not hers, a different one, and dialed a number on speaker. It rang 3 times before Lucien answered. "Victor?" His voice was flat, dead. Nothing in it but cold fury. "Lucien, I have something of yours." Silence. Then, "If you've hurt her, she's unharmed, for now, but that can change very quickly depending on how cooperative you are." "What do you want?" "What I've always wanted. Your territory, your operations, your complete surrender. Sign over everything you've built, and I'll consider letting her live." "You're lying." "Probably. But you'll never know unless you agree." Victor's smile was sharp enough to cut. "You have 1 hour to deliver signed documents transferring all assets to my control. Bring them to this location. Come alone. If I see any of your people within a mile of here, I start taking pieces of her. Let me talk to her." Victor held the phone toward Sienna. "Say hello to your savior." Sienna's throat was tight. "Lucien, are you hurt?" His voice cracked on the question. "No, not yet. I'm going to get you out of this. Don't give him what he wants. He's going to kill me anyway." "Sienna, I mean it. Don't sacrifice everything you've built because I was stupid enough to get in a car with a stranger." Victor pulled the phone back. "How touching. 1 hour, Lucien. After that, I start breaking things that don't heal." He ended the call. Sienna stared at him, trying to keep the fear from showing on her face. "He's not going to give you anything. Then you'll die knowing he chose power over you. Either way, I win." "You're insane. I'm pragmatic. There's a difference." Victor stood, smoothing his jacket. "Make yourself comfortable, Ms. Vale. You have 58 minutes before we find out what you're really worth to Lucien Knox." He walked away, leaving her surrounded by armed men who looked at her with the kind of indifference that suggested they'd watched people die and hadn't lost sleep over it. Sienna's mind raced. She had no phone, no weapon, no way out except through at least 6 armed guards and a man who'd already decided she was dead. For the first time since this nightmare started, she understood what Lucien had been trying to tell her. She was trapped. Completely. And the only person who could save her was the man she'd just walked away from. 43 minutes passed in suffocating silence. Sienna sat in that chair and counted her heartbeats because focusing on anything else meant thinking about what would happen when the hour ended and Lucien didn't show. He wouldn't come. Why would he? She'd called him a manipulator, a stalker, a monster. She'd told him she'd rather die than stay with him. People didn't save the ones who destroyed them. The warehouse door exploded inward. Not opened. Exploded. The metal shrieking as something heavy hit it hard enough to tear it from its hinges. Gunfire erupted immediately, deafening in the enclosed space. Sienna threw herself out of the chair and scrambled behind a stack of crates as bullets tore through the air where she'd been sitting. Through the smoke and chaos, she saw him. Lucien. He moved through the warehouse like violence given form, a gun in each hand, his suit jacket abandoned somewhere, blood already darkening his white shirt from a wound she couldn't see. His eyes were completely black, empty of everything except rage. He wasn't alone. Nick and Marcus and at least a dozen other men poured through the destroyed door behind him. They spread out with military precision, engaging Victor's guards in a firefight that turned the warehouse into a war zone. Sienna pressed herself against the crates, hands over her ears, trying to make herself as small as possible. Someone grabbed her arm. She screamed, striking out blindly. "It's me!" Elena's voice, sharp, urgent. "We need to move. Now!" "What are you—" "Shut up and run!" Elena hauled Sienna to her feet and dragged her toward the back of the warehouse. Behind them, the gunfire intensified. Someone screamed. Someone else shouted orders that were drowned out by more shooting. They'd almost reached the back exit when Victor appeared in front of them. He had a gun. Not pointed at Elena, pointed at Sienna. "Going somewhere?" Elena's hand went to her waistband. Victor's gun shifted to her. "Don't," he said pleasantly. "I'm faster. And I really don't want to kill you before Lucien watches." "Let her go," Elena said. "This is between you and Knox." "She is between me and Knox. That's the entire point." The gun swung back to Sienna. Victor's finger tightened on the trigger. A shot rang out. Victor staggered, blood blooming across his shoulder. His gun clattered to the concrete. Lucien stood 10 feet away, smoke curling from the barrel of his weapon. His face was spattered with blood. Not all of it his. His eyes found Sienna, and something in his expression cracked. "Get away from her," he said quietly. Victor laughed, actually laughed despite the blood running down his arm. "You came. I honestly didn't think you would. Thought you'd send your people and keep your hands clean. You threatened her." Lucien's voice was flat. "There's no world where I don't come for that." "Even after she walked away? Even after she chose me over you?" "She didn't choose you. She chose freedom. There's a difference." Victor pulled a second gun from behind his back, faster than Sienna would have thought possible for an injured man. Everything happened at once. Elena shoved Sienna sideways. Lucien fired. Victor fired. The warehouse filled with the sound of shots echoing off concrete and metal. Sienna hit the ground hard enough to knock the air from her lungs. When she looked up, Elena was on the ground clutching her side, blood seeping between her fingers. Victor was on his knees, another wound in his chest, still trying to lift his gun. Lucien crossed the distance between them and kicked the weapon away. Then he grabbed Victor by the collar and hauled him up with one hand. "You made a mistake," Lucien said. His voice was empty. "Dead. You should have come after me directly. Instead, you touched something that matters." "She doesn't matter," Victor choked out. "She's just another piece on the board." "No." Lucien's other hand came up, pressing his gun under Victor's chin. "She's the only piece that matters. And you're going to die knowing that you lost because you didn't understand that." "Lucien," Sienna said. Her voice sounded strange, distant. "Don't." He didn't look at her, didn't acknowledge she'd spoken. All his focus was on the man in his grip. "Please," Sienna tried again. "Don't become this. Not for me. I already am this." Lucien's finger tightened on the trigger. "I've always been this. You just didn't want to see it." "I see it now." She stood on shaking legs. "And I'm asking you not to do this." "Why?" "Because if you kill him like this, execution style while I watch, I'll never be able to look at you the same way." For the first time since he'd entered the warehouse, Lucien looked at her. His eyes were still that terrifying empty black, but something flickered behind them. "You already don't look at me the same way," he said quietly. "Then don't make it worse." He stared at her for a long moment. Then his gun shifted slightly away from Victor's chin. Not by much, just enough that the barrel wasn't pressed against flesh anymore. "You destroyed everything I built," Lucien said to Victor. "You threatened the only thing I care about. You don't deserve mercy." "Then don't give it to me." Victor smiled through the blood in his mouth. "Prove you're the monster everyone says you are." Lucien's jaw tightened. His finger stayed on the trigger. Behind them, the gunfire had stopped. Sienna could hear ragged breathing, someone groaning, the sound of boots on concrete as Lucien's men secured the warehouse. "Boss!" Nick's voice. "We've got them all. What do you want us to do with—" "Call the police," Lucien said. Everyone froze. "What?" Nick sounded like he'd misheard. "Call the police. Anonymous tip. Illegal weapons. Drug trafficking, whatever you need to say to get them here. Lucien released Victor, letting him collapse to the ground. Make sure Victor Sarno and his people are here when they arrive. Make sure the evidence is airtight. Victor stared up at him. You're handing me to the authorities? I'm taking everything you have without killing you. Prison will destroy you slower than a bullet. And every day you're inside, you'll know you lost because you underestimated what I'd do for her. Lucien turned away from Victor like he was already forgotten. His eyes found Sienna. We need to go, he said. Police will be here in 15 minutes. Sienna looked at Elena still on the ground, bleeding from her side. We can't just leave her. Ambulance is already on the way. Lucien's voice was gentle now, patient. Elena knew the risks. She chose this life. Did she? Sienna demanded. Or did you manipulate her into it the same way you manipulated me? The question landed like a slap. Lucien's expression closed off. Let's have this fight somewhere that isn't an active crime scene, he said. Nick appeared beside them. Boss, transport's waiting. Lucien nodded. He reached for Sienna's arm. She jerked away. Don't touch me. Sienna? I said don't. The hurt that flashed across his face was almost enough to make her regret the words. Almost. Fine. His voice went flat again. But we're leaving, now. Unless you want to explain to the police why you're here. She didn't, so she let him lead her out of the warehouse. Not touching, but walking close enough that she could feel the heat radiating off him. Outside, 3 black SUVs waited. The same kind that had followed her weeks ago when this nightmare started. Lucien opened the door to the middle one and waited. Sienna climbed inside because she was out of options and out of strength. Lucien slid in beside her. The door closed. The vehicle pulled away from the warehouse, leaving the sound of approaching sirens behind them. They drove in silence for 5 minutes. Then Lucien said, You called me a monster. You are a monster. I know. He stared straight ahead. But I'm a monster who just burned every bridge I had with law enforcement to make sure Victor faces justice instead of just dying. I did that because you asked me to. You did it because you wanted to prove something. No, I did it because even after everything, even after you learned about the surveillance and the manipulation and every terrible thing I've done, I still can't stop trying to be someone you don't have to be ashamed of. The words hit her like a fist to the chest. Lucien, I love you. He finally looked at her. His eyes were human again, tired, raw. I know I don't deserve to. I know I manipulated every moment we had together, but it stopped being manipulation somewhere along the way and became real. And I don't know how to prove that to you except by being willing to lose everything for you. You already did lose everything for me. Your reputation, your relationship with the police, I had Elena investigate you, he interrupted, 4 months ago. After I saw you in that coffee shop looking like the world had broken you. I told her to find out everything about you, your job, your relationship, your patterns. And yes, I had your phone flagged so that any text sent to a number similar to your boyfriend's would come to me instead. Sienna's stomach turned. Hearing him admit it again made it worse somehow. But here's what Elena didn't tell you, Lucien continued. She told me not to contact you, said you were too normal, too innocent, that pulling you into my world would destroy you. And I agreed with her. I decided to let it go, to let you be happy with your mediocre boyfriend and your ordinary life. What changed? I couldn't stop thinking about you. Couldn't stop wondering if that sadness in your eyes was permanent, if someone was hurting you, if you needed help and no one was paying attention. His voice cracked. And then you sent that text, that angry, heartbroken, desperate text. And I heard what I'd seen in that coffee shop, someone drowning who needed someone to notice. So I called you. And everything that came after, that was real, Sienna. The conversations, the way you made me feel, the way I fell in love with you, that was all real. Built on a foundation of lies. Built on obsession, he corrected. I won't apologize for that. I can't. Because obsession is the only reason I noticed you in the first place. The only reason I called you back. The only reason I'm sitting here bleeding in 3 places trying to convince you that what we have is worth salvaging. Sienna looked at him properly for the first time since they'd gotten in the car. His shirt was soaked with blood. There was a cut above his eyebrow, bruises forming along his jaw. He looked like he'd walked through hell and dragged himself back out through sheer will. "You need a hospital," she said. "I need you to tell me whether we're done." "Lucien, just tell me. If we're done, I'll take you home right now. I'll make sure Victor's people never find you. I'll disappear from your life completely, but I need to hear you say it." The SUV turned onto a street Sienna recognized. They were heading toward her apartment. "I don't know," she said finally. "I don't know if we're done. I don't know if what you did is forgivable. I don't know if I can trust you after everything, but I know—" Her voice broke. "I know I'm glad you came for me. Even though I told you not to, even though I said I'd rather die than stay with you, I'm glad you came." Lucien's hand found hers in the darkness of the SUV, scarred fingers lacing through hers. "That's enough," he said quietly. "For now, that's enough." The SUV stopped in front of her building. Lucien climbed out first, scanning the street with the paranoia of someone who'd seen too much violence. Then he helped her out. "My people will watch your building tonight," he said. "Tomorrow we figure out what happens next." "What about Victor? What if—" "He's going to prison for a very long time, and his organization will fall apart without him. You're safe, Sienna. I made sure of it." She believed him. That was the terrifying part. After everything, she still believed him. Sienna started toward her building entrance, then stopped and turned back. Lucien stood beside the SUV, backlit by streetlights, looking like something carved from violence and exhaustion. "Get your wounds treated," she said. "I will." "And Lucien?" "Yeah?" "Thank you for not killing him." Something soft crossed his expression. "You're welcome." She went inside before she could change her mind, before she could run back to him and admit that she'd rather drown in his obsession than live without it. The elevator ride to her floor felt like it took hours. Her hands were shaking as she unlocked her door. Everything in her apartment looked exactly the same as it had when she'd left that morning. But everything was different now. Sienna collapsed on her couch and finally let herself cry. For the terror. For the betrayal. For the fact that she'd fallen in love with a man who'd orchestrated every moment of their relationship. And for the worse fact that even knowing all of that, she still loved him. Her phone, returned to her by one of Lucien's men before she'd gotten in the SUV, buzzed on the coffee table. A message from Lucien. "I meant what I said. Every word. If you need time, take it. If you need space, I'll give it. But if you need me, I'm here, always." Sienna stared at that message until her vision blurred with tears. Then she typed back, "I need time." His response came immediately. "Take all the time you need. I'll wait." And somehow, she believed that too. Outside her window, the city glittered in the darkness. Indifferent to the fact that Sienna Vale had just survived something that should have killed her, and that the man who'd saved her was the same one who'd put her in danger in the first place. She didn't know if that was love or insanity. Maybe it was both. 3 weeks passed in a silence that felt like holding her breath underwater. Sienna went back to work, wrote copy for products she still didn't care about, smiled at coworkers who asked if she was feeling better after her flu, pretended her entire world hadn't been torn apart and badly stitched back together. Lucien kept his word. He didn't call, didn't text, didn't show up at her apartment or her office or any of the places he'd once watched her from the shadows. But she knew he was still there. Still watching, because sometimes she'd catch a glimpse of Nick across the street, or see Marcus sitting in a coffee shop she'd just left. Lucien's people maintaining distance, but never really leaving. It should have felt invasive, should have made her angry. Instead, it felt like the only thing keeping her from falling apart completely. The news reported that Victor Sarno had been arrested on multiple charges: weapons trafficking, racketeering, 3 counts of attempted murder. His organization had collapsed within days, lieutenants scrambling to cut deals with prosecutors. The warehouse raid had been attributed to an anonymous tip from a concerned citizen. No mention of Lucien Knox anywhere in the official reports. He'd managed to save her and destroy his enemy without leaving a single trace connecting him to any of it. That should have impressed her. Instead, it just reminded her how good he was at manipulating reality to suit his needs. On the 22nd day, Sienna's phone rang at 2 in the morning. She grabbed it in the darkness, heart already hammering because no one called at 2 unless something was wrong. Elena's name on the screen. Sienna answered. "Hello? He's hurt." Elena's voice was tight, strained. "It's bad. He won't go to a hospital, won't let anyone help him. And I think he's giving up. Ice flooded Sienna's veins. What happened? Cleanup from Victor's organization. One of his people didn't get the memo about the war being over. Lucien took 3 bullets. Nick got him home, but Elena's voice cracked. He keeps saying your name. Says if you don't want him, then there's no point fighting anymore. That's emotional manipulation. It's the truth. Elena sounded exhausted, defeated. I've worked for Lucien for 8 years. I've never seen him like this. He's always been in control, always had a plan. But since you left, he's been walking around like a dead man. And now he actually might become one. Sienna sat up, already reaching for clothes in the darkness. Where is he? Elena gave her an address. Not Lucien's apartment, somewhere in Queens. I'll send a car, Elena said. It'll be there in 5 minutes. I can drive myself. The car will be faster. And Sienna? Elena's voice softened fractionally. Whatever you decide when you get here, whether you stay or leave, make sure he knows. The not knowing is killing him slower than the bullets. The line went dead. Sienna dressed in the dark with shaking hands, jeans, sweater, jacket. Her mind was racing too fast to process anything except the image of Lucien bleeding out while saying her name. The black SUV was waiting outside when she reached the street. Marcus sat in the driver's seat, his face grim. How bad is he? Sienna asked as she climbed in. Bad enough that Elena's scared, and Elena doesn't scare. They drove through empty streets, the city reduced to streetlights and shadows. Sienna's hands were clenched so tight in her lap that her nails bit into her palms. She'd spent 3 weeks convincing herself she could walk away, that what Lucien had done was unforgivable, that loving someone who'd orchestrated your entire relationship was a sickness she needed to cure. But the thought of him dying, of never seeing him again, never hearing his voice, never having the chance to figure out what they were, made her chest crack open. The safe house was in a residential neighborhood that looked too normal for what it was hiding. Marcus pulled into an alley behind a brownstone and led her through a back entrance that required 3 separate security checks. Inside, the place looked like a field hospital. Medical supplies scattered across a dining table, bloody towels piled in a corner. Nick and 2 other men Sienna didn't recognize stood in the hallway, their expressions carved from worry and exhaustion. Elena appeared from one of the bedrooms. She looked worse than she'd sounded on the phone. Dark circles under her eyes. Her shirt stained with blood that probably wasn't hers. He's in there, Elena said quietly, gesturing to the bedroom door. He's conscious, mostly, but he's lost a lot of blood and he won't let us call a doctor. Why not? Because doctors ask questions, and right now he doesn't care about the consequences. Sienna's throat tightened. She moved toward the bedroom door. Elena caught her arm. Whatever happened between you two, whatever he did that made you leave, I need you to know something. Elena's eyes were intense, burning. Lucien Knox is a lot of things. A criminal, a manipulator, a man who solves problems with violence, but he's also the most loyal person I've ever met. When he loves someone, he doesn't do it halfway. He burns for them. And right now he's burning out because he thinks he lost you. He didn't lose me. I walked away. Is there a difference? Sienna didn't have an answer for that. She opened the bedroom door. The smell hit her first. Blood and antiseptic and something underneath that smelled like infection setting in. Lucien lay on the bed, his torso wrapped in bandages that were already seeping through with red. His face was pale. Too pale. Bruises darkened his jaw and collarbone. An IV bag hung from a makeshift stand beside the bed, pumping fluids into his arm. He looked like he was dying. His eyes opened when she entered. For a moment he just stared at her like she was a hallucination his fever had conjured. Sienna. His voice was rough, weak, nothing like the controlled tone she was used to. You're here. Elena called me. She moved closer to the bed, trying not to look at the extent of his injuries. She said you were hurt. I'm fine. You're bleeding through your bandages. Minor detail. Despite everything, Sienna almost smiled. You're an idiot. Yeah. He tried to shift position and his face went gray with pain. That's been established. She sat on the edge of the bed, careful not to jostle him. Up close, he looked even worse. His skin was clammy, his breathing shallow. She could see his pulse jumping in his throat, too fast and too weak. Elena said you won't go to a hospital. Can't. Questions I can't answer right now. So you're just going to lie here and die? If that's what it takes. The casual way he said it made her chest tight. That's not funny. Wasn't trying to be funny. His eyes found hers. I meant what I said in the car 3 weeks ago. If you're done with me, then there's no point in any of this anymore. That's emotional manipulation. It's the truth. He coughed, wincing at the pain it caused. I built an empire on violence and fear because I didn't have anything else worth living for. Then you stumbled into my life and suddenly I had a reason to be something more than just a monster in an expensive suit. And when you walked away, his voice cracked. When you walked away, I realized I'd rather be nothing than go back to being what I was before you. Sienna's eyes burned. You can't put that on me. You can't make me responsible for whether you live or die. I'm not. I'm just telling you why I don't care anymore. Well, start caring. Her voice came out harsher than she intended, because I didn't come here at 2 a.m. just to watch you give up. Something flickered in his expression. Hope, maybe. Or just confusion. Why did you come? Because... She stopped, swallowed hard. Because 3 weeks without you has been the longest 3 weeks of my life. And I hate that. I hate that I miss you. I hate that I'm still in love with you despite everything you did. But hating it doesn't make it less true. Lucien's hand moved slowly, like it took all his strength. His fingers found hers, scarred and blood-stained and trembling. You still love me? He asked quietly. Yes. And I'm furious about it. That's fair. It's not fair. None of this is fair. Tears were running down her face now. She didn't bother wiping them away. You manipulated me. You watched me for months. You orchestrated everything about our relationship. And I should hate you for it. Should walk away and never look back. But I can't. Because somewhere in all that manipulation, something real happened. And I don't know how to separate the lies from the truth anymore. There were no lies. Lucien's grip on her hand tightened fractionally. Everything I told you about how I felt, that was real. The way you made me feel seen for the first time in my life. The way you made me want to be better than what I am. All of it was real. Built on surveillance and stalking. Built on obsession, he corrected. And yes, that's sick. Yes, that's wrong. But it's also the only reason I noticed you in the first place. The only reason I called you back. The only reason I'm lying here bleeding because I can't seem to stop trying to protect you. Sienna looked at their joined hands. His blood was staining her fingers. She should have pulled away, should have demanded answers, should have done anything except lean forward and press her forehead against his. If I stay, she whispered, if I choose this, choose you, I need you to promise me something. Anything. No more surveillance, no more watching me without my knowledge, no more making decisions about my safety without asking me first. Done. I mean it, Lucien. If we're going to do this, we do it as equals, not as someone you're obsessed with and controlling. I can't promise I won't still be obsessed with you. I'm not asking you to stop being obsessed. I'm asking you to let me in on it. Let me see the whole truth, the good parts and the terrible parts. All of it. Lucien's eyes searched hers. And if the terrible parts are worse than you think, then we deal with them together. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I killed someone 3 days ago. The confession landed between them like a stone. Who? Sienna's voice was steady, calmer than she felt. One of Victor's lieutenants. He came after Nick, shot him in the shoulder. I put 3 bullets in him before he could finish the job. Is Nick okay? He's fine. He was here earlier, but Elena sent him home to rest. And the man you killed? Dead before he hit the ground. Sienna should have been horrified, should have pulled away and run. Instead, she just held his hand tighter. Do you regret it? She asked. No. He would have killed Nick. He would have kept coming after my people until someone stopped him, so I stopped him. That's the truth? No manipulation? No trying to make yourself look better than you are? That's the truth. I'm a killer, Sienna. I have been since I was 19 years old and my father's empire landed in my lap. And I probably will be until someone finally puts a bullet in me that I can't walk away from. Like the 3 you took tonight. Like those. Sienna lifted her head and looked at him properly. At the man who'd stalked her and saved her and loved her with an intensity that bordered on pathological. At the criminal who'd just admitted to murder without flinching. At the person who'd rather die than live without her. Okay, she said. Okay, what? Okay, I'm staying, but you need to let Elena call a doctor, a real one, not some back alley surgeon who's going to get you killed with an infection. Sienna, that's the deal, Lucien. I stay, but you live. Because I'm not sitting here watching you die out of some misguided sense of pride or fear of questions you can't answer. Something like relief washed over his face. Elena has a doctor she trusts, retired trauma surgeon, doesn't ask questions as long as you pay him enough. Then call him, now. Lucien nodded weakly. Can you get Elena? Sienna stood and walked to the door. Elena was waiting in the hallway, her expression carefully neutral. Call your doctor, Sienna said. Lucien's ready to be treated properly. Elena's eyes widened fractionally. Then she nodded and pulled out her phone. Sienna went back into the bedroom. Lucien was watching her with an intensity that would have been unnerving if she didn't understand it for what it was. Desperation, hope, love wrapped up in obsession and fear of loss. You came back, he said quietly. I never really left. She sat beside him again. I was just trying to figure out if I could live with loving someone like you. And can you? I don't know yet, but I'm willing to try. She took his hand again. That's all I can promise right now. That I'm willing to try. That's more than I deserve. Probably. But you're getting it anyway. The doctor arrived 20 minutes later. An older man with steady hands and the kind of face that suggested he'd seen too much to be surprised by anything. He examined Lucien's wounds with professional efficiency, asking no questions about how he'd acquired 3 gunshot wounds and an infection that was already setting in. He worked for 2 hours, cleaned and redressed the wounds, administered antibiotics through the IV, gave Elena a list of medications and instructions that were detailed enough to constitute a medical textbook. He needs rest, the doctor said finally. Real rest. No more getting shot. No more fighting. His body's reached its limit. Understood, Sienna said. The doctor looked at her with something that might have been sympathy. You're the reason he's still fighting, aren't you? I don't know what I am. You're the reason. He packed up his supplies. I've been patching up Lucien Knox for 5 years. I've seen him take bullets and keep walking, break bones and barely flinch. But this time he was ready to quit until you walked through that door. He left before Sienna could respond to that. Elena appeared in the doorway. Doctor's paid. He'll come back in 3 days to check the wounds. Thank you, Sienna said, for calling me, for everything. Don't thank me yet. You just signed up for a life most people run from. I know. Do you? Elena's eyes were sharp, evaluating. Lucien's world doesn't have normal, doesn't have safe. You'll spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder, wondering if the next Victor Sarno is coming, if the next bullet has your name on it. I know, Sienna said again, but I'd rather live that life with him than a safe life without him. Elena studied her for a long moment. Then she nodded. Then you might actually survive this. Most people who get pulled into Lucien's world don't last 6 months, but you. She almost smiled. You might be different. Why? Because you walked away, and then you came back. That takes a kind of strength most people don't have. Elena left, closing the door quietly behind her. Sienna turned back to Lucien. He'd fallen asleep finally, his breathing deeper and more even than it had been earlier. The color was starting to return to his face, slowly, but enough that she could believe he might actually survive this. She pulled a chair beside the bed and sat down, her hand still holding his. This was her life now. This strange, violent, obsessive love that shouldn't work but somehow did. This man who'd stalked her and saved her and loved her with an intensity that most people would call insane. And somewhere in the middle of all that darkness, Sienna had found the only person who'd ever really seen her, who'd noticed she was drowning when everyone else walked past, who'd pulled her out of the water even though he'd been drowning himself. It wasn't healthy, wasn't normal, wasn't any of the things relationships were supposed to be, but it was real. And for Sienna Vale, who'd spent most of her life feeling invisible, real was enough. 5. Lucien woke 36 hours later. Sienna had barely left his side except to eat and use the bathroom. She'd ignored 17 calls from work, sent a single text to her boss saying she had a family emergency and would be back when she could. When his eyes finally opened, they found her immediately. Like even unconscious, he'd known exactly where she was. "You're still here," he said. His voice was rough but stronger than before. "Where else would I be? Home, work, anywhere that isn't watching a criminal recover from gunshot wounds. I called in sick." "You're going to lose your job." "Probably." Sienna shrugged. "I hated it anyway." Something that might have been amusement crossed his face. Then it faded into something more serious. "Why did you stay?" "Because I love you, and because—" She took a breath. "Because you were right. What we have is real, all of it. The good parts and the terrible parts. And I'd rather have something real and complicated than something safe and empty." Lucien's hand found hers. "I don't deserve you." "No, but you're stuck with me anyway." "Sienna, let me finish." She squeezed his hand. "I'm not going to pretend the surveillance and manipulation didn't happen. I'm not going to forgive you for stalking me for months, but I'm also not going to walk away from the only person who's ever made me feel like I matter. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to recover. You're going to stop taking bullets for people, and we're going to figure out how to have something that resembles a normal relationship. I don't do normal. Then we'll make our own version of normal, one that works for us." He stared at her for a long moment. Then he said, "I want to marry you." Sienna's heart stopped. "What?" "Not now. Not while I'm bleeding in a safe house. But someday. When this is over. When Victor's people are gone and the dust settles and we figure out what normal looks like for us." His eyes were intense, burning. "I want to marry you, Sienna Vale. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep with you every night and spend the rest of my life proving that I can be someone worth loving. You're already someone worth loving. Then marry me, someday. When you're ready." Sienna felt tears burning in her eyes. "You're supposed to ask, not tell." A ghost of a smile touched his mouth. "Will you marry me? Someday?" "Yes." The word came out without hesitation, without doubt. "Yes, someday. When we figure out what our version of normal looks like." Lucien pulled her down gently, mindful of his injuries. His lips found hers in a kiss that tasted like blood and antiseptic, and promises neither of them knew if they could keep, but they were going to try. Why? 6 months later, Sienna stood in Lucien's apartment, their apartment now, since she'd moved in 3 months ago, staring at a box of her belongings from her old place. Most of her things were already integrated into the space. Her books on his shelves, her coffee mug beside his in the kitchen, her clothes in the closet next to his expensive suits. But this box was different. This box contained the remnants of her old life. Photos with Marcus that she'd never thrown away. Notebooks from college. The cheap wine bottle from the night she'd sent that text message to the wrong number. She should have thrown it all away months ago. Should have let go of the person she'd been before Lucien. Instead, she'd kept it. A reminder that she'd had a life before him. That she'd been someone before he'd inserted himself into every corner of her existence. "You can throw it away," Lucien said from behind her. She turned. He stood in the doorway, dressed in jeans and a t-shirt instead of one of his usual suits. The casual clothes still looked strange on him, like he was playing dress-up as a normal person. His wounds had healed. 3 scars now marked his torso, where the bullets had torn through him. He said they didn't hurt anymore. Sienna caught him touching them sometimes when he thought she wasn't looking. "I don't want to throw it away," she said. "It's part of who I was. Who you were before me." "Yes." He moved into the room, standing beside her to look at the box. "Do you miss it? Your old life?" "Sometimes. It was simpler, safer. I knew who I was and what I wanted. And now? Now I'm figuring it out." She looked at him. "With you." Lucien had been true to his word. No more surveillance without her knowledge. No more making decisions about her safety without asking. He still had people watching for threats, but now he told her about it. Showed her the security reports. let her be part of the decisions. It wasn't perfect. They still fought about his need for control, about her need for independence, about what it meant to build a life together when one of them ran a criminal empire. But they were trying, and that was something. Elena's getting out, Lucien said suddenly. Sienna's head snapped toward him. What? She told me last week. She's done. Wants to retire while she's still young enough to have a life outside of all this. How do you feel about that? Relieved. She deserves better than spending her life cleaning up my messes. He was quiet for a moment. I've been thinking about doing the same thing. Sienna's heart kicked. You mean getting out, legitimizing everything, turning what's left of my operations into an actual security firm instead of whatever gray area it's been operating in? He looked at her. It won't be immediate. We'll probably take years to fully transition, but I want to try. For you. For us. Lucien, I know what you're going to say. That I shouldn't change who I am for someone else. That you fell in love with me as I am, not who I could be. His hand found hers. But I don't want our children growing up afraid of what their father does for a living. Children. They'd never talked about children. Never planned that far ahead because planning felt like tempting fate. Do you want children? Sienna asked quietly. With you? Yes, someday, when the world is a little less violent and I'm a little less likely to get shot. She laughed despite herself. That's a low bar. It's the truth. He pulled her closer, careful and gentle in a way that still surprised her sometimes. I want everything with you, Sienna. The normal stuff, the complicated stuff, all of it. Even though we started because of a wrong number, especially because of that. His forehead touched hers. Because that wrong number brought me the only thing in my life that's ever been completely right. Sienna kissed him, soft and slow and real, the kind of kiss that didn't need obsession or manipulation to mean something. When they pulled apart, she said, "We should probably get married before we start talking about children. Is that a proposal? You already proposed to me 6 months ago while bleeding in a safe house. And you said someday. I'm asking if someday is now." Sienna thought about that. About the life they'd built in the ruins of everything that had tried to destroy them. About the man who'd stalked her and saved her and loved her with an intensity that should have been terrifying but somehow wasn't. About the future they were trying to build together despite all the reasons it shouldn't work. Yes, she said. Someday is now. They got married in a small ceremony 6 weeks later. No grand spectacle, no empire on display. Just Sienna and Lucien and a handful of people who'd survived the violence alongside them. Nick stood as best man with his arm still in a sling from the bullet he'd taken. Elena was there, smiling despite the fact that she'd given her notice the week before. Marcus, Lucien's Marcus, not Sienna's ex, had cleaned up his suit and looked almost normal. Sienna's mother flew in from 3 states away and cried through the entire ceremony. She didn't know what Lucien really did for a living, didn't need to know. She just saw how her daughter looked at him, and that was enough. The ceremony was short, simple, real. When the officiant asked if they took each other for better or worse, Sienna almost laughed, because they'd already been through worse, had already survived things that should have destroyed them. The better part was what they were building now. Lucien slipped a ring onto her finger, simple platinum, no diamonds, exactly what she'd asked for. She did the same for him, her hands shaking slightly. I love you, he said quietly, meant only for her. Even though I don't deserve you, even though I manipulated everything to make this happen, I love you completely. I love you too. Sienna's voice cracked. Even though you're terrible at normal, even though you're still the most controlling person I've ever met, I love you anyway. They kissed while their small audience applauded. And for the first time since that rainy night 6 months ago, when Sienna had sent a text to the wrong number, everything felt completely right. Years later, Sienna would tell people they met by accident, a wrong number, a mistaken text. Fate playing games with technology and human error. She wouldn't mention the surveillance, the manipulation, the months of obsessive watching that had preceded that first phone call. Some truths were too complicated to explain to people who hadn't lived them. But late at night, when Lucien held her close and whispered that he'd burn the world down for her all over again, she'd remember. Remember the warehouse where he'd saved her, the safe house where she'd chosen to stay, the moment she'd realized that loving someone didn't have to be healthy to be real. They built a life together in the wreckage of everything that had tried to destroy them. Lucien slowly transitioned his operations into legitimate security work. Sienna quit her marketing job and started a consulting firm helping small businesses tell their stories. They bought a house outside the city, somewhere with space and light and distance from the violence that had defined their beginning. And on quiet mornings when they sat on the porch watching the sunrise, Sienna would think about that rainy night and the text message sent to the wrong number, the message that should have disappeared into the void. Instead, it found the one man willing to burn down the world for her. And in the end, that wrong number became the only thing in her life that had ever felt completely right. Even if it started with obsession, even if it was built on manipulation, even if every rational part of her brain said it shouldn't work. Love, real love, didn't follow rules, didn't care about healthy boundaries or normal progression. It just existed, raw and messy and real. And Sienna Vale had learned to stop fighting it. She'd learned to love the monster who'd saved her from drowning, even if he'd been the one who'd pulled her into the water in the first place. Because some loves were born in darkness. Some loves required surviving hell together before they could become something beautiful. And some loves started with a wrong number that became the only right thing in two broken people's lives. Years from now, when their children asked how they met, Sienna would smile and say it was fate. And Lucien would catch her eye across the room, and they'd both know the truth. Fate had nothing to do with it, just obsession and desperation, and two people who'd found each other in the wreckage and decided to build something real from the ruins. That was enough. That was everything. And on quiet nights when the world was still and safe and theirs, they'd remember the beginning, the rain, the text, the voice in the darkness that had changed everything. And they'd be grateful for the wrong number that had brought them together. Even if the path between that moment and this one was paved with violence and manipulation and choices that shouldn't have worked. Because it did work, against all odds, against all logic, against everything that said it was impossible. They worked, and that was the only truth that mattered anymore.